Ancient Egyptian is probably deciphered by Jean-Francois Champollion. Sheikh Ant Diop is one of the greatest black scholars of the late 20th century. Using the Egyptian language, Diop was able to prove that the ancient Egyptians were black Africans, related to Africans living in West Africa. Although some people believe Egyptian has never been deciphered, Sheikh Ant Diop has made important contributions to linguistic theory in relation to African historiography. Diop's work illustrates that it is important for scholars to maintain a focus on the historical and linguistic factors which define the personnalité culturelle africaine. To define Egyptian and Paleo-African culture, Diop used the Egyptian language. Being able to read ancient Egyptian allowed Diop to gain keen insight into the Egyptian civilization. Language is the sanctum sanctorum of Diop's Afrocentric historical method. The Diopian view of historiography combines the research of linguistics, history, and psychology to interpret the cultural unity of African people. Always at the base of these studies was the Egyptian language. Diop has used comparative historical linguistics to illuminate the unity of African civilization. Diop has noted that the process for the evolution of African languages is clearly apparent. From afar we have the idea that Wolof is descended by direct filiation to ancient Egyptian. But the Wolof, Egyptian, and other African languages are derived from a common mother language that one can call Paleo-African. The common African or Negro-African language of the Homburger or Theophile Obinga. I believe that the Egyptian language has been deciphered. There are 5 reasons why I believe Jean Champollion deciphered the ancient Egyptian language. Number 1, the Rosetta Stone was a bilingual text. Number 2, people can read Greek in ancient Egypt, but they also read Egyptian. Number 3, Coptic is an African language, not Greek. 4, you can read the hieroglyphics using Coptic. And 5, Egyptian hieroglyphics were not just written by priests, so it was not a secret language. The fact that the language was not spoken in 2,000 years did not prevent it from being deciphered. The whole idea that hieroglyphics were only known by the priests lacks any validity. We know it was not only used by the priests because inscriptions are found on different types of media, and not just in the temples. The key to deciphering the ancient Egyptian language was Coptic, and the bilingual text that we call the Rosetta Stone. Using Coptic allowed Champollion to decipher the Egyptian hieroglyphics. We know Coptic is an African language. Coptic is not Greek. The reason we know that it is an African language is because comparative linguistics show its genetic relationship with many Niger languages. This verified the authenticity of Champollion's decipherment. The Copts are a mixed people that has nothing to do with the language they speak. Many Turks in Egypt speak Arabic today. The Moors and North Africans were originally black, but due to mixing with white women, the rulers of North Africa are predominantly white today. But the white North Africans continue to speak Arabic and the Berber languages. As a result, although the Copts are mixed today, has nothing to do with the Egyptian language they speak. Egypt under foreign rule created some discontinuity in culture, language, and people. But Egypt was also a polyglot nation, which was made up of blacks speaking various languages and practicing varied cultures and religions. In fact, ancient Egyptian was a bilingual Pan-African civilization. We know that there were various people living in ancient Egypt because of the fact that each Egyptian city was divided into a different nome. And in these nomes, the people spoke different languages. It appears that ancient Egyptian was a lingua franca used to unite the country. The Copts maintained Egyptian because it was their native language. That is why Coptic is related to African languages and not a dialect of Greek. In Egypt, the Greeks learned Egyptian. They learned Egyptian so they could be like the ancient Egyptians. Alexander the Great swore that he was the long-lost son of Osiris immediately upon his arrival at the ancient temple of Heliopolis. Greek was also spoken in ancient Egypt, but we know that until the rise of Christianity, the principal language spoken in Egypt was ancient Egyptian. We can hypothesize that ancient Egyptian languages can be translated into Netcher, because all three of the languages were on the same document, i.e., the Rosetta Stone. If it was not meant to be read in all three languages, there is no reason for there to be three different languages engraved on the Rosetta Stone. They would not have had to translate Coptic into Greek, because Coptic is the Egyptian language. That's why we have key Christian documents like the Bible translated from Greek into Coptic today. Coptic is Egyptian, so there was no need for a dictionary. Secondly, they translated the Septuagint Bible because it was a major document of Christianity into Coptic. If Coptic was a Greek language, then the people who speak Coptic would not have had to translate Greek documents into Coptic. In Ptolemy's time, the Egyptian people wrote in the Egyptian language. The Egyptian religions were considered pagan. So beginning around 400 AD, the non-Egyptian rulers began to shut down the pagan temples in Egypt. Closure of the last pagan temples had taken place by the 6th century. I'll quote from one of the researchers that's done research on this period in Egyptian history. History relates how the early Christians destroyed all pagan objects of worship and disrupted images in accordance with the first 10 commandments, when Christianity became the official religion of the Roman Empire at the end of the 4th century. Saint Shenouda in Upper Egypt, assisted by the Copts, the monks agreed with him, decided to destroy the ancient temples and idols. Nevertheless, a return to images was necessary when people were not able to assimilate Christianity and its doctrines without the aid of visual means. Representations assisted the faithful in understanding the new religion, and at the same time illustrated it. Al-Makhrizi, the famous Arabic historian of the 14th century, mentioned that Butler states that it was the Patriarch Cyril, the 24th Pope, in 420 AD, hung icons in the churches of Alexandria, first in the seat of the Patriarch, and then in all the other churches of Egypt. In other words, in a sense, the Copts did not give up their language, which was Egyptian. The only thing they did is they stopped worshiping Egyptian gods. Coptic is not derived from Greek. The Coptic people just used the Greek characters to write their literature. Just like today we can write Swahili or Hausa using our alphabet. 2,000 years ago, the Coptics could read and write hieroglyphics. Copt is equivalent to the word Egyptian and is derived from the Greek word Aegyptus. The Copts only stopped reading and writing hieroglyphics when the pagan temples were closed, as the Coptic people adopted Christianity. We know the Greeks knew Netcher. This is proven by the fact that Greeks, 1, translated Egyptian books they had to know from Netcher into Greek. 2, Greeks wrote Demotic on the Rosetta Stone. 3, Demotic was just a cursive form of Egyptian like Hieratic. 4, the Greeks also knew Hieratic, the priestly language of the Egyptians. As a result, knowledge of Demotic allowed Champollion to decipher ancient Egyptian. He could decipher ancient Egyptian using the Coptic language, because the Coptic language is Egyptian. Hieratic is not derived from hieroglyphic Egyptian, and sometimes it appears on the identical pottery marks together, as we can see in this picture. The first syllabic writing system of Africans was the Thinite script. This writing was used by blacks in Nubia, like the Niger-Congo people who migrated out of this region into the rest of Africa. The Thinite script provides many of the signs that are included in later-day scripts used by Africans and the Sumerians, people in the Indus Valley, and the Minoans. In Africa, blacks were using Thinite symbols before the rise of Egypt to record their ideas and report on important events. This writing was later used by Africans to write inscriptions throughout Middle Africa. Ancient America is represented by the Olmec script, and other places around the world. The Egyptians invented 3 scripts: hieroglyphic, hieratic, and Demotic. These scripts were used by the Egyptians for thousands of years. The Egyptian hieroglyphic script was confined mainly to monuments. Egyptian hieroglyphs are not ideograms. Egyptian hieroglyphs are stylized pictures of an object representing a word, syllable, or sound. The hieratic writing was a simplified form of hieroglyphics. It was used in this day for businesses and for religious purposes for almost 3 millennia. And the final script was the Demotic script. Many Egyptian pottery signs agree with the Demotic writing. The Demotic script is the only Egyptian script that was used by just about every Egyptian. This writing was confined to ostraca, papyri, and possibly on papyrus, which was used as a paper by the ancient Egyptians. The Demotic script was used from the 7th century BC to the 5th century AD. The Demotic records were used by commercial, legal, and administrative sectors of the Egyptian society. The fact that Demotic was written up until the 5th century AD really proves that it was only after the Christians began to demolish the pagan temples in Egypt that the Coptic people stopped writing in Egyptian. Demotic signs were borrowed by other scripts. 6 of the Coptic signs were derived from Demotic, and many of the Meroitic signs are of Demotic origin. The second oldest script is the Proto-Saharan script, or Thinite. The Proto-Saharan script comes from Gebel Sheikh, Suleiman, and Nubia. The Gebel Sheikh Suleiman relief has been discussed by many scholars such as Williams and Trigger. The Gebel Sheikh Suleiman inscription is found near Buhin, Nubia. It is carved on a sandstone rock. This inscription was probably written by the A-group people who helped found ancient Egyptian. The ancestor of the Egyptians or Kemites originally lived in Nubia. The Nubian origin of Egyptian civilization is supported by the discovery of artifacts by archaeologists from the University of Chicago's Oriental Institute at Krustal. It is interesting to note that the Egyptians took the Thinite signs and invented the hieroglyphic and hieratic signs. In the Egyptian pottery signs, we often find hieroglyphic and Egyptian and hieratic signs which are clearly Thinite in origin. The fact that we can read these signs indicate that Egyptian writing has been deciphered. This is made clear when we examine the Gebel Sheikh Suleiman inscription. Williams and Trigger have failed to discuss the entire inscription on the Gebel Sheikh Suleiman relief. These scholars ignore the Proto-Saharan inscription and describe only the relief from left to right, as follows: a Shrek topped by a falcon, looking over a victorious battlefield, sacred bark, and a bound prisoner. But in reality, we find more of these figures on the Gebel Sheikh Suleiman inscription, which appears to date back to the A group period of Nubia over 5,000 years ago. This is obvious when we examine the photographs of the Gebel Sheikh Suleiman relief. From left to right, we see a falcon or a shrik sign surmounting a house, palace. In front of this village palace scene, we see a prisoner bound by the bow, the sign of the stew. Facing the prisoner bound by the bow, the sign for the stew, we see a bird over a circle with the letter X inside. Beside this scene, we have another bird sitting atop the letter X within the circle facing a victorious battle scene, which includes a man bound to a sacred bark. Over the sacred bark, we find 21 Proto-Saharan signs. These signs agree with the Egyptian pottery symbols, stenite, etc. The Gebel Sheikh Suleiman inscription is an obituary written for a king called Fe, a pharaoh called Fe, that is. Coptic is related to the ancient Mandi languages of West Africa. The Mandi wrote and devised script, and we can interpret many of the signs from Gebel Sheikh Suleiman using the Vai signs. We can read the Manding language to read the Gebel Sheikh Suleiman inscription. Reading from right to left, we read Igabalu, Fekiende, Kailu, Fefetu, Beyusu, Susutu, Susei Bugde, Pogvetu. This can be translated as follows. Thou family habitation, hold it upright. Phase of status on the shore of the watercourse. Cut through the sepulchre habitation for the family here. Faye preferred to be obedient to the order. Lay low the celebrity in the large hemisphere tomb, and offer up libations that merit upright virtue. Pure righteousness is King Faye. This King Faye of Gebel Sheikh Suleiman may relate to Pharaoh Pehor, the throne of Horus, since in African languages F and P are often interchangeable. It is interesting to note that there is an inscription on a storage jar from Cemetery L of Kustal, Nubia that reads Pehor. This Pehor may be the Faye of the Gebel Sheikh Suleiman inscription. The Thinite symbols on the Gebel inscription are all dated to the A group. Bruce Williams in the A group Royal Cemetery at Kustal has noted that the prison on the Kustal incense burner is analogous to the bound prison on the Gebel Sheikh Suleiman. The stew had the same funeral customs, pottery, musical instruments, and related artifacts of the Egyptians. Williams believes that the Kustal pharaohs are the Egyptian rulers referred to as the Red Crown rulers in ancient Egyptian documents. Dr. Williams gave 6 reasons why he believes that the stew of Kustal founded Egyptian or Kemite civilization. 1. There is direct progression of royal complex designs from Kustal to Heliopolis to Abydos. 2. Egyptian objects in Nakada 3, A and B tombs. 3. No royal tombs in Lower and Upper Egypt. 4. Pharaonic monuments that refer to conflict in Upper Egypt. 5. Inscriptions of the ruler Pehar are older than Irihor of Abydos. 6. The 10 rulers of Kustal, 1 in Hierakonpolis and 3 Abydos, correspond to historical kings of the Nakada period. The Thinite writing, Gebel Sheikh Suleiman, and Kustal incense burner highlight the antiquity of writing in Egypt. The fact that the prison was bound by a stew, the author of this relief, were the A group people. Finally, Pharaoh Faye of the Gebel Sheikh Suleiman may relate to Pharaoh Pehor, since in African languages F and P are often interchangeable. The inscription on a storage jar from Cemetery L of Kustal, Nubia that reads Pehor. This Pehor may be the Faye of the Gebel Sheikh Suleiman inscription. Below is the Pehor inscription. It is interesting to note that the Pei sign in Egyptian corresponds to the Po sign in the Proto-Saharan language. In summary, the Copts and Greeks had knowledge of Medu and Netcher. The Copts were Aegyptos, or Egyptians, so they knew how to write the hieroglyphics. The Copts abandoned their own writing system to become great Christians, just like many Africans gave up their writing systems and used Arabic after they became Muslims. In conclusion, there are 5 reasons why I believe the Egyptian language was deciphered by Champollion. 1. The Rosetta Stone is a bilingual text. 2. People could read Egyptian who were Greeks. 3. Coptic is an African language, not Greek. 4. You can read the hieroglyphics using Coptic. And 5. Egyptian hieroglyphics were not just written by priests, so it was not a secret language. The ability to read the Gebel Sheikh Suli manuscripts and then find mention of the same Egyptian pharaoh, Pehor, and King Fay makes it clear that Egyptian hieroglyphics have been deciphered.